A black single mother stood in traffic court, trying to explain why she was late paying a parking ticket. The judge looked at her and said, "I don't have time for excuses from people like you. Get out of my courtroom." What that judge didn't know, the woman he just humiliated was Andrea Williams, a lawyer who had just passed the bar exam. And in exactly 5 years, she would become his boss, the supervising judge of that very same courthouse. What happened when they met again will restore your faith in karma and justice. This story proves that how you treat people when they have no power shows your true character. And sometimes, the person you disrespect today becomes the person who decides your future tomorrow. Before we dive into this incredible story of justice and redemption, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss more true stories where karma wins. Now let's see what happened. Andrea Williams was 32 years old and a single mother of 2 children, a 10-year-old daughter named Maya and a 7-year-old son named Jordan. She had raised them alone after her husband died in a car accident 4 years earlier. Life was hard. Andrea worked 2 jobs while going to law school at night. She cleaned offices from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., then attended classes from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. After that, she went home to help her kids with homework, make dinner, and study until midnight. She had just graduated from law school and passed the bar exam on her first try. Andrea's dream was to become a judge one day so she could help people who couldn't afford good lawyers. She knew what it felt like to struggle, and she wanted to make the system fairer. But first, she had to deal with a $150 parking ticket she couldn't afford to pay on time. Judge Richard Blackwell was 58 years old. He had been a judge for 15 years and came from a wealthy family. His father was a senator, his mother was a lawyer, and he had never struggled financially in his life. Judge Blackwell ran his courtroom with an iron fist. He was known for being harsh, especially to people he thought were wasting his time. He had no patience for excuses, no sympathy for struggles, and no interest in understanding people's circumstances. Some lawyers called him the ice judge because he seemed to have no heart. Several complaints had been filed against him for being rude and dismissive, but nothing ever happened. He had connections, and he thought he was untouchable. It was a Tuesday morning in traffic court. Andrea had taken time off from work to appear before Judge Blackwell. She owed $150 for a parking ticket she got 3 months ago when her car broke down in a no-parking zone. She couldn't afford to pay it on time because she had to buy her daughter's asthma medication. Andrea wore her best outfit, a simple black dress she bought at a thrift store. She carried a folder with all her documents: her law school diploma, her bar exam results, medical receipts, and proof she was starting a new job as a public defender next month. She hoped Judge Blackwell would understand and give her a payment plan. She was about to learn a hard lesson about how the system treats people who look like they don't have power. Andrea stood before the bench. Judge Blackwell was reviewing papers and didn't look up. "Andrea Williams," the clerk called out. "Yes, Your Honor," Andrea said respectfully. "I'm here about case number 2847, a parking violation." Judge Blackwell finally looked up. His eyes swept over Andrea, her thrift store dress, her worn shoes, her tired face. His expression showed immediate judgment. "Another unpaid parking ticket," he said with a sigh. "Do you have the money to pay today?" "Your Honor, I brought documentation that explains." "That's a yes or no question," Judge Blackwell interrupted. "Do you have $150 to pay today?" "No, Your Honor, but if I could explain." "So you're wasting the court's time," he said. "Next case." Andrea's heart raced. "Your Honor, please. I just need a moment to explain my circumstances. I have proof that—" "Ma'am, I don't need to see your proof," Judge Blackwell said, making air quotes mockingly. "Everyone who comes in here has an excuse. You parked illegally. You didn't pay the fine. Those are facts." Andrea took a breath and tried again. "Your Honor, I understand the law. I actually just passed the bar exam, and I'm starting work as a public defender next month. The day I got this ticket, my car broke down in a no-parking zone. I was trying to get my daughter to the hospital for her asthma attack." "Oh, here we go," Judge Blackwell interrupted, rolling his eyes. "The sick child story. You people always have a sick child or a dying grandmother." The courtroom went silent. Several people gasped. Even the court clerk looked uncomfortable. Andrea felt her face flush with humiliation. "Your Honor, I have the hospital records right here." "I don't care," Judge Blackwell said coldly. "You're not special. You broke the law. You pay the fine. That's how it works." "Your Honor, I'm asking for a 30-day extension so I can start my new job and—" "Extension denied," Judge Blackwell said. You have 48 hours to pay the full amount plus late fees, which brings your total to $275. If you don't pay, a warrant will be issued for your arrest. Andrea couldn't believe what she was hearing. Your Honor, please, I have 2 children. If I get arrested, they have no one to take care of them. I just need a reasonable payment plan. Should have thought about that before you broke the law, Judge Blackwell said. You know what your problem is? People like you think rules don't apply to you. You think you can play the victim and the system will just give you a pass. People like me? Andrea said quietly. Yes. People who make excuses instead of taking responsibility. People who think showing up with a sad story means they deserve special treatment. He leaned forward. Let me be clear, I don't care about your story. I don't care about your circumstances. And I certainly don't care that you supposedly passed the bar exam. The word supposedly hit Andrea like a slap. Judge Blackwell continued, 48 hours, pay or face arrest. And frankly, if you can't manage a simple parking ticket, you have no business being a lawyer anyway. Now get out of my courtroom before I hold you in contempt. Andrea stood there shaking. Every eye in the courtroom was on her. Some people looked sympathetic, others looked away, but no one said anything. She gathered her papers with trembling hands and walked out, her head held high despite the tears threatening to fall. Behind her, she heard Judge Blackwell say, "Next case, and let's hope this one doesn't waste my time." Andrea borrowed money from her church to pay the ticket. She started her job as a public defender and worked harder than anyone in the office. She defended people who couldn't afford lawyers, people the system had forgotten about, people like her. Over the next 5 years, Andrea built an incredible reputation. She won case after case. She treated every client with dignity. She fought for justice even when it was difficult. Her dedication caught the attention of the state governor. When a position opened for supervising judge of the county courthouse, Andrea applied. She had the experience, the education, and most importantly, the compassion the position required. After a rigorous selection process, Andrea Williams was appointed as the new supervising judge. She would oversee all the judges in the county, including traffic court, including Judge Richard Blackwell. Andrea's first day as supervising judge started with a meeting of all courthouse judges. She walked into the conference room wearing her new judge's robe, her head held high. Judge Blackwell was already seated. He glanced up at the new supervising judge and did a double take. His face went pale. Andrea smiled calmly. Good morning, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Judge Andrea Williams, your new supervising judge. I'm looking forward to working with all of you. She made eye contact with each judge in the room. When her eyes landed on Judge Blackwell, she held his gaze for just a moment longer. I want to start by reviewing some of our courthouse procedures and values, Andrea continued. My priority is ensuring that every person who walks through our doors is treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their background or circumstances. Judge Blackwell shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I'll be conducting courtroom observations over the next few weeks, Andrea said. I want to see how we're serving our community. I want to make sure we're upholding not just the letter of the law, but the spirit of justice. After the meeting, Judge Blackwell tried to leave quickly, but Andrea called out, Judge Blackwell, could you stay for a moment? He turned slowly, his face a mask of forced professionalism. Andrea waited until the room emptied, then she closed the door. Do you remember me, Judge Blackwell? She asked quietly. I see many people in my courtroom, he stammered. 5 years ago, traffic court. A black single mother with a parking ticket. You told me to get out of your courtroom. You said people like me don't take responsibility. You mocked my bar exam results and said I had no business being a lawyer. Judge Blackwell's face turned red. That was a long time ago. I'm sure I was just... You humiliated me, Andrea said, her voice steady but firm. In front of a courtroom full of people, I had hospital records proving my daughter was sick. I had documentation showing I'd just passed the bar exam. I asked for a simple payment plan and you threatened me with arrest. Your Honor, I apologize if... Don't, Andrea interrupted. Don't apologize if I was offended. You were wrong, you were cruel, and based on the complaints I've reviewed, I wasn't the only person you treated that way. She opened a file folder on the table. I've been reading through complaints filed against you over the past 15 years. 23 formal complaints about disrespectful treatment, 18 complaints specifically from people of color, 7 complaints about denying reasonable accommodations. Judge Blackwell's eyes widened. Those complaints were dismissed because you had connections, Andrea finished. Because the previous supervising judge was your college roommate, but I'm not your college roommate, Judge Blackwell. I'm someone who knows exactly what it feels like to stand in front of you and be treated like I'm worthless. Andrea walked to the window, looking out at the courthouse parking lot. You know what that day taught me? It taught me that the law isn't always just, that having power doesn't make you right, and that how we treat people when they're powerless says everything about our character. She turned back to face him. You're not fired, Judge Blackwell. Not yet, but things are going to change. You're going to attend mandatory training on implicit bias and courtroom conduct. I'll be personally observing your courtroom once a month. And if I see you treat anyone the way you treated me, you will be removed from the bench. Is that clear? Judge Blackwell nodded, his arrogance completely deflated. Yes, Your Honor. Good. Because everyone who walks into your courtroom deserves respect. The single mother with a parking ticket, the immigrant who doesn't speak perfect English, the young person who made a mistake, they all deserve dignity. And if you can't give them that, you don't deserve to be a judge. Over the following months, Judge Blackwell's courtroom changed dramatically. Under Andrea's supervision, he started treating people with patience and respect. He listened to their stories. He considered their circumstances. He became the judge he should have been all along. Some say the change was genuine. Others say it was fear of losing his job. But either way, people noticed the difference. Andrea also implemented changes throughout the courthouse. She created a payment plan system for people who couldn't afford fines. She brought in translators for non-English speakers. She established a community liaison program so people understood their rights. The courthouse that had once felt cold and intimidating became a place where justice was truly served. 6 months into Andrea's tenure as supervising judge, Judge Blackwell requested a private meeting. Andrea agreed. Your Honor, he began, his voice humble, I owe you a real apology. Not because you're my supervisor, but because what I did to you was wrong. Andrea listened silently. I've been thinking about that day a lot, he continued. I was cruel to you. I dismissed your achievements. I judged you based on your appearance and made assumptions about your character. I'm ashamed of who I was. What changed? Andrea asked. You did, Judge Blackwell said. You showed me what real strength looks like. You could have fired me on day one. You could have humiliated me the way I humiliated you. But you didn't. You gave me a chance to be better. That's more grace than I deserved. Andrea nodded slowly. Judge Blackwell, I didn't spare you out of weakness. I spared you because I believe people can change. But change has to be real. It has to last even when no one's watching. I understand, he said. And I want you to know, I'm trying. Every day I'm trying to remember that every person in my courtroom is a human being with a story, with struggles, with dignity. Andrea's story spread throughout the legal community. She became known as a judge who truly understood justice, not just punishment, but fairness, compassion, and rehabilitation. In interviews, Andrea always returned to the same themes. That day in Judge Blackwell's courtroom could have destroyed me. Instead, it motivated me. It reminded me why I wanted to be a judge in the first place, to help people who feel powerless in the system. Judge Blackwell taught me an important lesson. Never let someone's cruelty define you. Let it refine you. Use it as fuel to become everything they said you couldn't be. Power reveals character. How you treat people when they can't fight back shows who you really are. I hope I use my power differently than it was used against me. Years later, Andrea would write in her memoir, the judge who kicked me out of his courtroom did me a favor. He showed me exactly what kind of judge I didn't want to be. And he gave me the determination to prove that where you start doesn't determine where you finish. As for Judge Blackwell, he served under Andrea's supervision for 3 more years before retiring. At his retirement party, he gave a speech. The best thing that ever happened to my career was getting a boss who held me accountable. Judge Williams didn't just make me a better judge. She made me a better person. If this story inspired you or gave you hope, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel right now. We share real stories about justice, perseverance, and karma. Drop a comment and tell us, have you ever been dismissed or disrespected, only to prove them wrong later? How did you handle it? Hit that notification bell so you never miss stories about people who turn their pain into power. Remember, how people treat you when you're down says everything about them. How you rise says everything about you. Thanks for watching and see you in the next story.